Okay, so now the connection between the two kind of dimensions, the dimension of the research philosophy with the dimension of the research design. I promised you that research philosophy was very important and useful. That's what I said in the first video. So here is the connection. So it is important because at different stages, it will help us to decide and to justify. It can also help us to figure out our limitations. So, for example, if I go back to the example that I said about football and basketball, you should also highlight, like, I decided to play basketball and I'm using this ball. It's totally coherent. It makes sense. But a limitation is that I can't use my feet to play. That's a different example. But if you apply it in research, it's the same thing. I am assuming that that there is a relationship between multicultural boards and financial performance, and I want to study that. That is why I'm collecting objective data through a survey and statistical methods. But the limitation is that I am ignoring the psychological and social elements. There are some that, for the purpose of my question, for what I problematize, that is just a limitation. It's something that is in there, but it won't be like critical on I can still answer to my research question. Then two important concepts that you need to learn. One is the methodology and the other is the method. Probably you're a bit confused. What do we mean with methodology and with method? And that is relevant in terms of the research design so that you don't get confused. Well, first, the methodology is kind of the whole strategy. The methodology is everything that you do to answer to your research question. And it starts from collecting data or even planning, even before collecting, but planning, collecting the data, analyzing the data. And there are different methodologies. We will talk about that. There are, for example, case studies from qualitative, experimental methodologies from quantitative. And then the method is different. The method is the tool, only the tool or the mechanism that can help you to collect data or to analyze data. So for example, a method of data collection in quant is a survey, or in qual it can be interviews. So I think that maybe you are seeing what's the difference between methodology and method. Here are a few examples. We will go into detail about that. I think you can read the literature for today's lecture on different methodologies associated with positivism. All of them are quantitative. And then in the ones in interpretivism, they are all qualitative. One final thing before we conclude in the next video. There is, besides all of this, the ontological assumption, the epistemological assumption, methodological assumption, there is another concept that, at least in John Shopping, is very important. I'm not sure why, but it's very important that you talk about it, is what is the research approach that you are following throughout the whole methodology and throughout your whole research design. And at least we have three types of approaches, and I hope I can explain them to you in an easy way. Inductive approach is an approach that is very linked to the qualitative, to the interpretivist paradigm, because in the inductive approach, you start your research design with less theory and more empirics. You don't want to read a lot. You don't want to get biased by the theory, because you say, I want to go and get so much data that I can theorize later. In my opinion, this is not the best approach on a thesis, because first, this inductive approach works really well when you are studying something very new. That's one thing. And new theoretically, not empirically. For example, you are saying like ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence is something very new. But in reality, it's not that new. If you think about, for example, business models, you can read a lot about digital transformation, for example, and it's more or less, theoretically, is very similar. So empirically is totally different, but theoretically is very similar in terms of theories. The theories that explain digital transformation can also explain the ChatGPT transformation at some degree, or if not, you need to justify. But inductive, in my opinion, is not the best because of that. Like, probably you won't be able to find something that new. And the second is because of the resources that you have. You only have 4 months to do this thesis, And probably to collect the data, you only have like a month. So in order to do something inductive, you need to collect a lot of data. So you have so much data that you can theorize. And I think in 1 month of data collection, you can't do that. Then we have the other approach, which is the opposite. It's linked to positivism, and it is the deductive approach. In the deductive, it's like a detective. That's why it's called deductive. You want to test hypotheses. You want to test the theory. So in here is the opposite. A lot of theory before going to the empirics. You will learn with me when I teach you how to do the survey, how to do the hypothesis. I will teach you and I will help you to start with theory and then move to the empirics. And then the abductive approach is something in between, because in the abductive approach, maybe I would say you are based on theory, but at the same time you are open to see, you don't want only to test, you start with a theoretical framework and you say, okay, this is what is supposed to happen, but I am open to see what happens. So then you go to the empirics and then you realize, okay, this is quite new. I will study more. I will see what's going on. And then you come back and then you improve that model, that theoretical model that you had at the beginning. In my suggestion, if you are doing something very quant, like surveys or databases and statistics, your approach should be deductive on testing. If you are doing a qualitative case study, for example, or a mixed method approach, you should be abductive, because you need to start theoretically strong, like at least propose a framework. Like, I want to study ChatGPT in marketing, but it's a very simple thing, but I want to study that. So you can construct in your literature review chapter 2, you can construct a theoretical framework of what we know based on digital transformation or internet and business, something like that. And you can say, okay, based on theory, it's very important to understand the technological aspects, the social aspects, the financial aspects, and political aspects. I'm just making up words because previous literature on digital transformation and Internet of Things, blah, 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 they discovered that these elements are interesting. So then you propose that abductively, you say like, I start with this, and then you go to the field and you collect data, and then you say a lot of things are correct, a little bit deductive, like yes, yes, yes. But I also discovered this. So that's why it's abductive, because it's kind of a combination between inductive and deductive. But you have to show that it was like an iterative process. Like, you started in the theory, then you went to the field, then you came back to the theory, and then probably you had to go one more time to see if it works, and then you come back to the theory, and the conclusion of an abductive thesis is usually a redefined model. Like, the model started like this, but after doing the research, it actually looks like this. So my suggestion is that to facilitate your life, don't think about inductive, because it's difficult to convince and you need a lot of data, and probably you only have like a month. If you have more time, or if you can focus on collecting a lot of data and you find a very unique topic, maybe you can do the inductive, but that's personal thing again. So next video, I will only conclude, and that's it. We are done.